things?
Not in the short term, at least. Probably not in the midterm. The Israelis, I don't think, have a nuclear power system. Yeah, I don't think so. But they do have a couple hundred tactical nukes, which are more than enough for their strategic needs. They might. They're very cagey on this. Have a few city flatteners just in case Iran gets too uppity. But that's all designed as a last ditch. This is what we do when the last of us is going into the ocean because we've been overrun sort of play. They don't have a strategic doctrine for anything less than that. As for the Saudis have a lot of military stuff on paper. But it's all shrink wrapped and stored in air conditioned warehouses. And they only very, very recently started training on any of it themselves when they came to the conclusion that the US really had no interest in coming to pull them out of the fire if they pick a fight with someone, including Iran. Iran, of course, has a nuclear weapons program, but has not been able to create a device, much less a deliverable weapon. And to be perfectly blunt, it's not clear that they're going to be able to. They might, they probably will be able to get enough fissile material to do it. But Iranian engineers are not world class, and they were not world class by definitions in the 1940s, much less today. So I would think that if the Iranians were ever going to get a weapon, they would have done it already. But if I'm wrong, and they are closer than I think, then I will bet my entire life that the Saudis will go to Pakistan and purchase a few nukes the next day. Uh, Saudi technical acumen is significantly below that of Iran's, but they've got a really big checkbook. And there are some people out there who have nukes who, with the right number, would sell. And the Saudis have already set that up. So it can happen very, very quickly should they feel so pressed. But the US will have nothing to do with that. If anything, the US would do a significant amount of things to prevent it from happening, but I don't think we could stop it. Well, let's start at what it was before the assaults. This was an open air prison camp. This is an area that has no economic reason to exist. It is a prison camp. Uh, and as such, there is no meaningful trade. It's dependent upon the outside world for over 90% of their food and 100% of their energy. That those supplies either come from Israel directly as a kind of a drip feed just to keep the place quiet, or international donations, and that is the entire story. So while I don't obviously do anything but vomit when I see what has happened and what Hamas has done, you have to admit when the best that you could hope for is to be mayor of a prison camp. That's the height of social and technological achievement in Gaza. You can understand why some people choose some darker paths. They'll never get back to where they were. Israel controls all but one sliver of the border, which is with Egypt, and that's where the tunnels are that allow the Palestinians to smuggle things in. At a minimum, the minimum response that we will see out of Israel is clearing out an area maybe a quarter of a half mile thick and compressing the prison even a little bit more to make sure that none of those tunnels can ever be used again. And these people will be completely at the mercy of whatever the Israeli political system allows. And I don't see another way out of that, because the Egyptians are the only other country in play here. They're on the wrong side of the Sinai to project power here. And even if they could project power, they're not going to do it to free Gaza, because even if the walls went away tomorrow, then it's an open air prison camp with fewer walls. There is not a future here. And now that we've seen very clearly that Hamas cannot not only patrol its own territory to prevent things like this from happening, but actually encourage things like this to happening. There is no administration that can go in there and fix this. So you're looking at a degree of organizational chaos if the Israelis win and do root out Hamas. And if they fail, then you're talking about a state of on again, off again, open warfare with a people that have nowhere to go. The humanitarian scale of what's about to happen is going to be horrific. Well, from our last talk, we talked a lot about China and Russia and how we're going to both outlive both of those countries. We're not going to outlive Iran. Iran's been around for a very long time. It's had good government continuity over most of the 4,000 plus years that Persia's been in existence in some form. And the ruling class isn't one person like it is in China. It's a group of 10,000 mullahs. So even the world's most aggressive assassination campaign can't wipe that out. In addition, it's mountainous. So the military challenge, ever defeating Iran in any circumstance is almost impossible. That doesn't mean it's going to be a dynamic economic power. That doesn't even mean it's destined to be a long-run oil exporter, but it does mean it's durable. No matter how this goes down, Iran will survive this just fine in the short run. The question, of course, is in Riyadh. So the Iranians, I would be shocked if we don't find the information relatively soon that they helped shape this operation and help support Hamas. But again, everyone in this area has been a friend. Everyone in this area has been a foe. Hamas is Sunni and Arab, whereas Iran is Shia and Persian, and they think of each other as apostates. They are convenient allies for the moment, and from the Iranian point of view, entirely disposable. So if they can get someone that they think is an apostate to do some horrific things in order to break up the potential alliance between two other apostate groups, for them, there's no downside here. And even odds, they're going to get their way. But even if they don't, they have demonstrated that they have the capacity to manipulate groups 1,000 miles away in ways that no one can detect. From their point of view, there's no downside here. From their point of view, there's nothing but potential successes ahead of them, because if they really did have a role in this, then there's no reason to expect that they can't do it again with another group that maybe is even a little bit more ideologically allied, such as Hezbollah, who are Shia. It's difficult to clear inside the mind of somebody who has an ISIS-like approach to the world. But it appears to be that the thinking is if we kill enough Israelis openly, publicly, obviously, brutally, that they will roll into Gaza. And even if we can turn it into a kill box and kill 10,000 Israeli soldiers, and even if every single one of us dies, the process of the Israelis doing that will kill so many civilians that had nothing to do with this, that the world will condemn Israel in a way that actually means something. And before you say that it's completely batshit, keep in mind that that was basically Osama bin Laden's approach for 9/11. You bait the United States to do something it wouldn't ordinarily do, and in doing so, trigger a region-wide uprising to overthrow the secular governments of the region. It didn't work. Well, that's a big jump from Gaza, but sure. Okay, so the whole idea of globalization is it was a bribe. We were so scared of Stalin in the days after World War II that we knew that we needed millions of people to stand between us and the Red Army. Globalization is what we did. We used our Navy to patrol the open oceans to create global trade. And in exchange, you had to join us in the Cold War. And for the Europeans, that meant standing up and facing off against the Russians. And it worked. But the strategy that worked when we were the world's only Navy has steadily faded. Ever since 92, when the wall came down, we've been backing away from that security role, and we have elected a series of ever more economically nationalist presidents, culminating in Joe Biden. People forget that from an economic international point of view, that Biden and Trump are the two most similar presidents we've ever had. Just one of them knows how to use a grammar checker. We're not in the 50s anymore. The Soviets had a navy, but they were almost landlocked. The navy split up in 4 different seas. So it wasn't until after 1992 that we saw meaningful navies rise up in third powers in a degree that could potentially challenge us, with China, of course, being at the top of the list, but Japan's no slouch. The Brits are back in the game. The French never went away. The Turks have got some interesting stuff, and the Russians are now sharing their technology with anyone who will pay for it. India has made the board as well. So to maintain that position would require a much more powerful naval patrolling capacity than we had back in the 1980s. And our Navy patrolling capacity is much less than it was in the 1980s, because like everybody else in 1992, we declared kind of an end to history, and we changed the way our Navy works. It used to have global reach and global operational capacity. Now we've turned it into a purely military force, which I know sounds a little weird, but focused around the carrier battle groups so we can knock rogue nations off their perch. So we today have 12 of those, and all of our ships are basically committed to providing the defensive rings around the carriers. And they're the most powerful military platforms and units in human history, but we no longer have a large enough fleet in numbers to be everywhere at once like we used to be. And there are challenges in most of those places. So we would need probably 700 or 800 destroyers to provide global maritime security. We only have 70. And at any given time, half of those are with the carriers. So we're not in a position to even theoretically try. So the first time someone takes a shot at a civilian vessel and we're not there, that's going to unwind a whole lot of things that we've become used to. Everything from electronic supply chains to global oil.
Balance of trade.
Oh, well, global trade will go away. It will be regional in areas where local powers can provide their own maritime cover. The Western Hemisphere, I think, will broadly be fine, and we'll have some partners in Southeast Asia, plus Australia and New Zealand. And Japan, a bit of a surprise from 10 years ago, is basically joining that club. So there still will be, global trade, if you want to call that. It's more a series of regions that might be able to find some partnerships. But the hilarious thing is the country that has benefited the most from this globalization structure and the American security overwatch this whole time has been China. They're by far the country that's most dependent upon being able to send civilian vessels anywhere and anywhen at any time. And wow, they're screwing the pooch. There are a lot of people who talk about the Chinese playing the long game and being very well thought out. And I'm like, no, it's a cult of personality. It's one dude making policy in a room by himself, and he's doing so many stupid things. And challenging the US Navy is probably just the height of idiocy, because that is the backbone for his country's economic existence, not success, existence. They import 3/4 of their energy, and they import 3/4 of the stuff that allows them to grow their own food. And that's before you start considering the income that comes and the technology that arrives because of their play in global electronics. All that is being pissed away.